Why be captivated, my son, by an adulteress? Why embrace the bosom of another man's wife? For a man's ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all his paths. The evil deeds of a wicked man ensnare him. The cords of his sin hold him fast. He will die for lack of discipline, led astray by his own great folly. Proverbs 5 verse 20 to 23. Adding adultery in marriage. Remember, these are war. The moment you take on a sensitive matter and you start speaking it out, you are exposing it. And in the spiritual kingdom or spiritual realms dimensions, when you are exposing a certain wickedness to the right is a declaration of war. So this is a warfare against adultery, and it must end. Remember, in the Bible, idolatry is figuratively described through adultery. When God was telling the people of Israel about the idolatry in Ezekiel 16 and also in Ezekiel 23 and also in Hosea 2 and even in Malachi 2, he used the figure of speech using adultery. So adultery is, I don't know, one of the worst, if not the worst. Since here he is saying, why be captivated, my son, by an adulteress? So an adultery is very captivating. So if you're not discerning enough, and if you are not sharp enough, you will notice that you are easily swayed, because adultery uses decoy. Adultery mostly uses baits, something that you really desire or want, but you don't need it. But you really desire and want it. Whatever it may be, maybe you want to satisfy your own eyes or your curiosity or cravings, or whether it is from a polygamous background push. Adultery is very captivating. That's why the Bible says that stolen waters are very sweet. But notice here, he says, why embrace the bosom of another man's wife? And now that brings the whole question into a pause. He's saying, why embrace the bosom of another man's wife? And you know what the bosom of a wife means? The bosom. Remember, these are languages that are being used. If you look at Proverbs 2, the figure of speech that was used in verse 18 was house, her house. And then in Proverbs chapter number 5, the Lord used the language of lips. Her lips drip honey. And then in Proverbs 5 and verse 8, he used the door of her house, door, a gateway. And then in Proverbs 5 verse 20, he used the language of bosom. And you know what the bosom of a woman is. You get me? And then you are there. And he is saying, this ought to happen to you if you commit adultery. He says, for a man's ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all his ways. That is very important. Have you ever noted there are people who would sin and get away with the sin? But there are people, if you commit a sin, no matter how minor it is, it attracts dire consequences. To a point, you reach to a point where you say, God is God of injustice. Because what I did is exactly what so and so did. Why were they not affected? When another adulterous, you are always under 24-hour surveillance of God about whatever you are doing. Because remember, when you commit adultery, it is an affront against God. You are attacking God directly. That's why adultery is very dangerous. That's why the devil invests very, very, very much in adultery. You notice the sin of adultery is so severe as compared with the other sexual sin. Not saying the other sexual sins are supposed to be practiced, but adultery, you notice God has expressed himself explicitly. So you notice, if a person is committing adultery, you notice, even if you do the most minor thing, it will always get observed. Number two, he is saying, the evil deeds of a wicked man ensnare him. Adultery is a form of snare. The moment you commit adultery, when you are coming out of that, you come out of it as the way you see a rat. When they have put there the rat trap, and it comes and it enters and it is trapped, it is ensnared, whereby it is crushed by the trap, whether at the neck or somewhere, until it is completely compressed and it dies. Adultery is that kind of a snare. You enter into a trap, whereby means of coming out of that trap are very, very minimal, if not zero, unless divine intervention. Number two is saying, so adultery makes you to be ensnared, and he says the evil deeds of a wicked man. So when you commit adultery, it actually clothes you as a wicked person. So adultery makes you wicked, an abomination, filthy, very lewd. And then adultery makes you to enter into a snare. This is the people you find, they are moving from one deliverance church to another, seeking deliverance. But deliverance is not for the coming. Why? They enter themselves into a snare. Imagine you are trapped in that bosom of another man's husband. How would you go to get yourself from there? Hi. Our time is short. Then he says, the cord of his sin hold him fast. The cord, the yoke. And that will always introduce in your life a cord that holds on you very fast, tightly to hold on you. And this will speak of sorrow tie and covenants that are very harsh. So when you commit adultery, the cords of your sin, now that sin called adultery, now to you it becomes a cord, a yoke, an unbreakable yoke that holds on you fast, so tightly. Then he says he will die for lack of discipline. When you commit adultery, you die. Remember Genesis 20, the Lord is telling Abimelech, you are a dead man because of the woman you have in your house. She is someone else's wife. When you commit adultery, immediately death enters into you. So that kind of a death, you might not die naturally, we bury you, but you notice things about your life will just wither. Things in your life will just start to decay. They just started to rot and to decompose. Relationships, dimensions, standards of life, possessions, career, business, ministry, marriage. You start now finding death is all over in your life. And then he says, led astray by his own great folly. So adultery makes you to become a great fool. Somebody who commits an adultery, that adultery makes you to be a great fool. And imagine how intelligent